Good morning all, hope you are well, I hope you're having a good week, and thank you as always for joining us for our Bible reflection today. And today we are in one of my favourite chapters actually, I think, in the Bible. I love this chapter, 1 Samuel and chapter 3, fantastic. I just 1 Samuel, the books of Samuel and so on, they're a fantastic read, and here we go, a lovely one this morning. So without further ado, 1 Samuel and chapter 3, here we go. Now the boy Samuel was ministering to the Lord under Eli. The word of the Lord was rare in those days. Visions were not widespread. At that time, Eli, whose eyesight had begun to grow dim so he could not see, was lying down in his room. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called, "Samuel, Samuel." And he said, "Here I am," and ran to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." But he said, "I did not call, lie down again." So he went and lay down. The Lord called again, "Samuel." Samuel got up, went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." But he said, "I did not call you, my son, lie down again." Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. The Lord called Samuel again, a third time, and he got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." Then Eli perceived that the Lord was calling the boy. Therefore Eli said to Samuel, "Go, lie down, and if he calls you, you shall say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. Now the Lord came and stood there, calling as before, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant is listening." And the Lord said to Samuel, "See, I'm about to do something in Israel that will make the ears of anyone that hears of it tingle. On that day I will fulfill against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house from beginning to end. For I have told him that I am about to punish his house forever for the iniquity that he knew, because his sons were blaspheming God, and he did not restrain them. Therefore I swear to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be expiated by sacrifice or offering forever." Samuel lay there until morning, and he opened the doors of the house of the Lord. And Samuel was afraid to tell the vision to Eli. But Eli called Samuel and said, "Samuel, my son." He said, "Here I am." Eli said, "What was it that he told you? Do not hide it from me. May God do so to you and to more also, if you hide anything from me of all that he told you." So Samuel told him everything and hid nothing from him. And he said, "It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him." As Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him, and let none of his words fall to the ground. And all Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel was a trustworthy prophet of the Lord. The Lord continued to appear at Shiloh, for the Lord revealed himself to Samuel at Shiloh by the word of the Lord. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, it's a fascinating read, this one, really. You've got this little boy growing up and so on. But I think the main thing here really is the kind of changing of the guard. That up to now, Eli has been the sort of chief priest guy, and his two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, have gone rotten to the core, and things are going downhill rapidly. And Eli is approaching the end of his life, and Hophni and Phinehas were going to take over, and it would have been utter catastrophe. And yet again, God intervenes. And God so loved the world, and God so loved his people that he wasn't going to let that happen. And so here we have, in a sense, the kind of the changing of the guard. That God says to Eli, the Hophni and Phinehas are going to go, that line is going to finish, and Samuel's going to take over instead. So here you have a complete changing of the guard in God's people. And I think that's kind of the overall narrative that's going on here with this. But I do think it's interesting to look at some of the characters involved. Let's firstly look at this boy Samuel. Now it's interesting actually that it says here there was beginning of the chapter, it says the word of the Lord was rare in those days. Visions were not widespread. There was no frequent vision. Another version puts it. So we should say supernatural spiritual experiences were rare in those days. It also says later that Samuel at this point did not know the Lord. And did not know the Lord at this stage. And Samuel kind of hears these voices, and 3 times in the night, he kind of hears it, and each time he thinks it's Eli speaking, because why wouldn't he? Because he's not used to hearing voices. And then for the 4th time, after the 3rd time, Eli perceives that it's God speaking. And I think what it says to us is, I think listening to God, we can make it, hearing the word of God, we make it sound very easy sometimes, and we can recite testimonies as if kind of God speaks very. Actually, I think listening to God is one of the most challenging things about being a Christian, actually, and that sometimes we need to have other people to help us interpret what God is saying. Most priests are encouraged, for example, supposed to have spiritual directors, somebody you can talk through about where's God in your life, what's God saying to you. And here you have this young man, Samuel, who at this point does not know the Lord, doesn't have a beginning, does not have a personal relationship with God. Eli can see it, and then Samuel says, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." And I think what's interesting is he's told by Eli to say, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." When he actually does hear, what Samuel's actual words are, "Speak, for your servant is listening." That's in verse 10. Slightly different, because at this point he doesn't call him Lord, because he doesn't know the Lord, if you see what I mean. So you have this great guy Samuel, and you have his calling to service. You have God speaking to him. But I think what's interesting here, as I say, is when he first hears it, he doesn't know it's God. He needs, like we all do, some help to interpret what God is saying in the form of Eli. But then he gets there in the end. And I think what's also interesting is that then, with a bit of encouragement, he has the courage, if you like, to tell Eli what God is saying, because it's not something Eli wants to hear. This is when he goes on. Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him, and let none of his words fall to the ground. This is all Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel was a trustworthy prophet of the Lord. So this is kind of where it all started. So see this young boy who, at the beginning, doesn't know God. God speaks to him. Like all of us, he needs help interpreting it. We all need to talk things through in our lives sometimes. What's God saying to us in this? Could this be God calling me? This type of thing. And we all need help interpreting that. But he kind of gets there in the end. And that this is the beginning of Samuel, where Samuel does have a personal relationship with God. And he then becomes clear from this point that he is a reliable and trustworthy prophet who then does great things in the land. So that's kind of and I said the whole thing about this voice speaking in the night. I think it's fantastic, really. So you got the person of Samuel and how he ends up becoming where he is, and then you've got Eli. I like Eli. He's clearly a decidedly flawed character. He's vastly overweight. He's blind. He's old. He's decrepit. He's clearly been a shocking father over the years. He's let his kids, his sons, get away with all blasphemy and terrible. No, he's clearly taken his eye off the ball here. Hasn't done due diligence. Clearly hasn't done record checks and the kind of thing you might get today. He's clearly taken his eye off the ball when it comes to his sons. And yet, despite all that, he does have enough of a relationship with God to interpret that this could be God speaking to Samuel in the night. And I think, as I say, I've got a soft spot for Eli, really, because he has the wisdom to hear this, and he does have, despite everything, he does have enough of a relationship with God to be able to help Samuel interpret that it's God speaking. And at the end, Eli must have known that, we already did from the previous chapter, that God was not pleased with his sons. And he must have known that he hadn't reprimanded his sons enough and they got away with it. He must have known that all this bad stuff, and he must have known this wasn't good enough. And yet he was, he had the courage to be able to listen to God, to say to Samuel, look, tell me what it is, good, bad, regular, I need to hear this. And he has the courage to hear it. And actually, even though his sons are going to be deposed, and even though Samuel's going to take over for them, he still continues to look after Samuel. He continues to nurture Samuel, help him on his way. He does have an idea that the succession plan might not be what he'd hoped it would be. This is what it's going to be. And that he's enough of a person of God to be able to have the courage and the grace to hand it on to Samuel. I'm sure he had high hopes for his sons, but actually Samuel was God's plan. And Eli has the courage to see it. Friends, I hope you found that helpful. I think the whole thing about this, imagine this boy in the night being called out, I think it's fantastic. But have a lovely day, my friends. Thank you so much for watching. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you again soon. God bless.